Good morning. Welcome back to Planet Doug Behind the Scenes for Sunday, January 14th. It's about 10 o'clock in the morning. And the big news of today, I guess, is that I'm still ill, still sick, or at least I think I am. I don't really know right now because I've stopped eating. Whenever I get sick from something I eat or drink, my very first line of defense is to just stop eating and stop drinking, because that's the only thing that stops the cycle. I've learned over the years that if I get sick to my stomach and then I just wait for it to go away, but I keep eating meals, I just stay sick forever. And then life becomes impossible, and eventually I just develop this habit of not eating for as long as it takes, and then I can slowly start eating again, and then I seem to be better. And if it never goes away, then it's something more serious, of course, and then I have to pick up some antibiotics of some kind. This time, I don't know, I just wasn't in the mood for antibiotics. Just wanted to see whether this is something that my body will heal on its own. But I was just thinking back to the last meal that I had so I could calculate, what is going on. And the last meal I had was on January 9th. It's kind of a funny thing, when you record a lot of video, you actually have video records of your entire life, so you can go back in time and figure out exactly when everything happened. And of course, all the video files have a date and timestamp on them. So I went back in time in my video, and there was a day, January 9th, I actually shot video that day. I haven't edited that video. I wasn't even going to post it because my plan was to take a train. I was going to take the Siantar Express train from Medan to Siantar, and then go from Siantar to Parapat. And Parapat is where you get the boat on Lake Toba that takes you over to Samasir Island. So on January 9th, I went to the train station to buy a train ticket. And then, after I was at the train station, I stopped by this little food stall where I found this snack, which is like an avocado ice cream. It's not a smoothie, it's basically crushed ice, then a whole bunch of crushed avocado, and then they add condensed milk, and then they add some liquid of some kind, maybe not even liquid. There's like a syrup, like sugar syrup they add, and then 3 scoops of ice cream, mango and chocolate, but they put in 3 scoops in total for the most part. And then that whole thing, you drink it with a straw, or you eat it with a spoon. Anyway, I really love this, so I got another serving of that when I was walking away from the train station. And then when I was back in my neighborhood, I stumbled across a Chinese buffet restaurant, kind of like economy rice. And I've been looking for one of these places forever, because I really love those restaurants. They serve a very simple, easy meal that generally isn't very expensive. So I popped into this place in the late afternoon to have a meal. And that was the last meal, like mid-afternoon, January 9th. That's the last time I had anything to eat. So then today is the 14th, so I stopped eating on the 10th. So that would be the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th. I haven't had anything to eat for 4 days, and I was sick for much of that time. And then yesterday I was still sick, because there was still food in my system. It takes a long time to empty your body, again, TMI. And then today is day number 5, and I probably won't eat anything today either. I will content myself with instant coffee. And so, what was my big, small Planet Doug adventure yesterday? Well, it was a visit to the Rahmat International Wildlife Museum and Gallery. They gave me a little souvenir afterwards, which is kind of interesting. So again, what I wanted to do was go for a walk in Medan and explore a new neighborhood. But I'd been noticing this museum, this gallery on Google Maps. And to be honest, I have the vaguest memory that I had been there already, like years ago, 7 years ago or something like that. I feel like I've already been to this place, but I wasn't really sure. And even now, today, I went there yesterday and did a complete tour of the museum, shot video of the whole experience. And now today, I'm thinking, like, maybe I had been there before. It's like I can't actually remember, but I don't think I have been. I'm gonna have to go back into my archives of pictures I've taken in the past, because this would have been before I had a YouTube channel. So if I'd been to this museum before, I would have written about it and I would have taken pictures, but I wouldn't have any video of it. It does seem odd that I could go to someplace this interesting relatively recently, like 7 years ago, and have no memory of it. But to be honest, that's how my brain works these days. I barely remember, yesterday. So I've done things in my life now that constantly surprise me, where I'll just, for whatever reason, maybe I'm looking for a photograph from my past because I want to stick it into a YouTube video. So I go into my online photo accounts and I'm looking for a particular picture to download it or something. And I'll stumble across a photo album or a gallery of something I did 30 or 40 years ago. And I'm looking at it, I was like, oh yeah, I went there, and I have no memory of it at all. It's just completely gone from my brain. It's kind of crazy that, how poor my memory is when it comes to even big life events. It's kind of strange. Anyway, so I kept seeing this Rahmat museum, wildlife museum on Google Maps, and I did some research into it to figure out what it was all about, and I decided it might be an interesting place to go. I've sort of made a habit of going to the museums in Medan. I went to the Plantation Museum, I went to the State Museum, and now I thought I could add another one to it. And this one is different, and I thought it would be interesting because it's quite visual. It's essentially a set of exhibits of mounted animals. So they're not live animals. These are all like animal specimens from all around the world, mammals, reptiles, not really fish, mammals, reptiles, birds, and insects and arachnids. The whole almost everything. There are a few fish there, but not a whole lot to do with fish. Everything but sea life for the most part. I mean, there were turtles and things. And then I guess the man who founded it, he calls himself a sport hunter, but he's also very much into wildlife conservation. So my take on the whole place is that he just loves being a collector. He started from the point of view of being a hunter, and he likes to take the animals that he's killed while he's hunting and then use taxidermy to preserve them and then mount them. I think that was his starting point, but then over the years he's developed like sort of a wildlife conservation approach to what he's doing with this gallery. And whether that really informs his lifestyle and his philosophy or not, I'm not really sure. But he certainly talks about it a lot in all of his exhibits, and he seems to be very good at marketing. I didn't do a big investigation of it, but when you go into this wildlife museum and gallery, there's like an entire wall, an entire room, I think, filled with nothing but awards and certifications and trophies, and I think a lot of them were about his efforts in supporting wildlife conservation around the world. So I think he's very, very good at marketing, this guy, as well. But the heart of the exhibit are the animals. So I went there in order basically to go in and walk around and see all of the animals. And he's got all the big animals from Africa, all the big animals from North America, birds, as I said, you know, deer, elephants, rhinos, hippos, everything. Basically name an animal and there's going to be one of them there, even giraffes, you know, everything you can think of. And then every butterfly, moth, beetle, ant, insect, you know, all kinds of things. So yeah, it was an interesting place. I talk about it a lot in the video. I don't know if I don't really have to break down the entire experience, but one interesting thing about it is that when I walked from here, where I'm in like Chinatown, I walked from Chinatown to this museum, and it seems to be in an area of Medan that's called Polonia. And Polonia is more upper scale. It's a richer neighborhood with like big palatial homes and big palatial government offices and business offices, like a lot of old buildings, but very, very interesting architecture. So as I walked along, I was able to see a lot of these very interesting buildings in a district called Polonia. That I enjoyed that quite a bit. Considering how I was feeling yesterday, I should have taken a taxi to get there, or Baychak or something like that. And I considered doing that, but I couldn't help myself. I ended up walking the entire way. It was pretty funny. These are things that seem only to happen to me. You know, this is my lifestyle, I guess. It was quite funny because I got to the museum just in time. I was feeling okay walking to the museum, and just as I turned down the last road and I could see the sign for the museum just like 200 meters ahead of me, that's when the stomach cramps hit again. And I'm like doubled over on the street, like, oh no, this isn't good, you know. And I'm waiting for the stomach cramps to pass, and then I'm walking to the museum, and I'm thinking, can I make it in time? Can I make it in time? Because my plan was to get to the museum in time, buy a ticket, and the first thing I was going to do was hit one of their bathrooms. And then after that, because I knew it was coming, it was like clockwork, and then I'd be able to explore the museum, hit the bathroom again, and then walk back to my hotel and make it here before there was another emergency, you know. So I got to like 200 meters from the museum, and then the emergency hit, and then I got there, and then I kind of braved my way through the experience. I even spent some time at the outside of the museum, you know, talking about the place, taking video of the sign, of the entrance. Oh, here I am at the museum. Meanwhile, I'm sort of in agony the whole time. You know, I'm like, here I am at the museum. It's like, okay, here's where you buy a ticket. I'm going to go buy a ticket now. You know, but I held it together. I got the ticket, and then I went into the museum, and then as soon as I got inside, I was happy to find out that it was air conditioned. It's like, oh yes, that's good. And then I found the bathroom, and the bathroom wasn't the most spacious in the world, but it was spacious enough and modern enough and nice enough that I could deal with my problem. And then I got out of there, and then I was able to relax and go through the whole museum. But it was a little bit of an adventure, a little bit of a comical adventure, put it that way. Yeah, it was an interesting place to visit from, you know, the point of view of seeing all the different animals, birds, insects, crocodiles, you know, everything you could imagine. That was interesting. And looking at their exhibits was interesting, the way they put them together. A lot of their exhibits, you know, made no sense at all, because this was not a natural history museum. This was not a science museum. So they were just putting a whole bunch of exhibits together, a whole bunch of specimens. Because some of them, you know, the guy was a hunter, and he collected these animals himself. Others were, according to a sign there, they came from zoos. Like if a zoo animal died for whatever reason, the animal would be donated to his museum and he would have them mounted. And donations, like people from all around the world would donate specimens for him to put in his gallery. So he ended up with a lot of them. As they say, they have 2,600 different species. The exact number of specimens I can't tell you, but they could easily be in the hundreds, if not thousands. I mean, if you include the insects, definitely thousands. But because it was such a large collection and a relatively small space, they couldn't really be that picky. They couldn't have a Arctic exhibit. You know, they couldn't have a Rocky Mountain exhibit. You know, they couldn't have an African savanna exhibit separate from the desert exhibit. They basically just took everything and dumped it together. So in the same exhibit, you're going to have a polar bear and a grizzly bear, and then like all kinds of animals interacting, attacking each other, hunting each other, the way they put them together. But they wouldn't be animals that you would normally find in the same part of the world, right? He just threw everything into a room. He kind of kept them separate, you know, did the best he could. But, you know, at the very end of my video tour, I talked about this one room that's quite interesting because it was the insect room. So it was an entire room of nothing but butterflies, moths, beetles, bees, ants, those sorts of things. So that was the theme of the room. But in the middle of the room, there was a big skeleton of an elephant and a crocodile and a gorilla. You know, there's a whole bunch of skeletons there. So of course, an elephant has nothing to do with insects, but he happened to have this convenient space because the room was like a dome. So it had a nice tall roof. So they put insects on the walls, and then they took advantage of the space in the middle underneath the dome where they could put the giant, you know, skeleton of the elephant. So the physical space dictated where they put a lot of these animals, and not so much sticking to the actual rules of nature. Like nobody came in and said, hey, wait a minute, you never see a polar bear and a moose and a gorilla in the same part of the world. We can't put those in the same room. You know, here they just went, come on. And I had a lot of fun there. They had an interesting room called the, what did they call it again? Like the night gallery or something like that. So it was a dark room, and the whole idea was clearly to make it scary, right? Like almost like a Halloween themed haunted house, but for animals. So you go into this black tunnel, and then you go down a tunnel, and then into another room, which is kept very, very black. And then they have predators, mainly predators like lions and tigers, wolves all over the place. But they're kept in the dark, and they have speakers around, and the speakers are playing, you know, the roar of the lions and the tigers and the howling of the wolves. But at some point, they'll be quiet, like you're not hearing anything, and it'll be dark. But then there's a motion sensor that trips when you walk by it, and suddenly there's like this loud roar, you know, roar of a lion. The lights come on, and there's a lion right there, you know, jumping out at you. So that was, you know, you got to give them points for imagination, you know, putting that together, and that was kind of interesting. And I noticed at one point when I was in there, there was a couple going through, young couple, boyfriend and girlfriend, and they're holding hands as they're going in, and you could see the guy kind of leading the way, and he's holding his girlfriend's hand, and you could tell she wasn't thrilled about going into the dark, scary tunnel, right? And you could see them going in, and then the girl was like, you know, she's scared of all the wolves and the lions and the tigers. And I can see kids getting a big kick out of that. Seems like it would be an interesting place for kids to visit. like the animals are really interesting to see. Particularly, I mean, if you'd never seen anything like that before, imagine you are 9 years old, grew up here in Indonesia, and you've never seen an actual polar bear before. So to go to a gallery like this and then walk up and it's like, oh, key doodle, look at this thing. Or a grizzly bear, or a moose, giraffe, rhinoceros, coming right at you with the big horn. I can see some, Indonesian children thinking this place was pretty interesting. There weren't a lot of kids there when I was there. I don't know if it's popular with kids, though up on the second floor, there was also a big kind of a play area for children. So I think they do get like organized tour groups coming in, and like school groups will come in because they have all these low tables with small chairs, designed for children. And they have all these exhibits around the room that look like they're designed to appeal to children, huge teddy bears and things like that. So I think they do cater to young children, school groups, things like that. But overall, it was interesting to see as well because of the clear emphasis on marketing. And they clearly had more money to spend, like compared to something like the State Museum that I went to. I went to the government, the government-run State Museum of North Sumatra. And, from the point of view of a museum designed to convey knowledge, the State Museum is a much better example of a museum. It's all about information and knowledge and teaching you something. This museum, the Rahmat Wildlife Gallery, is more about entertainment. And they really lean into that, and it costs a lot more. Like the State Museum for a foreigner is $30,000, for a local person $5,000. This place, Rahmat, is $75,000 for an Indonesian, and I think $75,000 is a lot of money to charge someone in Indonesia, like a local person, to pay $75,000 per person to go into this place. Yeah, it's expensive. And then for a foreigner, it's double that, $150,000. So it's more expensive than other places, but because they make a lot more money, they're able to invest more. So they have a really fancy system where your ticket has a barcode, and then you go, you have to scan your code to go through a turnstile. They have a really nice coffee shop. They have nice bathrooms. It's all nicely air conditioned on the inside. And the exhibits are very well put together, with audio and some nice audio-visual content, things like that. So they're able to invest a lot more money in the infrastructure of the place. And as part of that, when you buy your ticket, you get a little coupon. And they kept telling me that, oh, your coupon, you can exchange it for something. And I didn't understand what they said. I thought I would be able to exchange it for a cup of noodles. Someone said that on the Google Maps review, or a coffee, or a bottle of water or something. I wasn't sure. But by the time I left, they were already closing. It was getting close to 5 o'clock when they closed. So the cafe was closed. I wasn't able to sit in there and have a coffee. But then as I was leaving, someone says, oh, you didn't get your souvenir yet. So they took the coupon from my ticket, went into the restaurant, and they came out with my souvenir, which is this notepad, which is kind of cool. I haven't even opened it yet, but it looks quite nice. And you can see, again, the marketing for this museum, because it's all branded. Has a nice photograph on the front of one of their exhibits, and it's branded, Rahmat International Wildlife Museum and Gallery. I'm guessing that is the name of the guy who founded the place, Rahmat. But I haven't looked that up. And then on the back, you have a map, of how to get there. And then it says fantastic and amazing collection from all over the world in one roof, more or less 2,600 species, and has their email address, their website. The website, by the way, is rahmatgallery.com, and then they're on WhatsApp, and yeah, I mean, just a really good marketing. Oh, look at that. Another picture on the inside, another exhibit. This is the opening that I talked about, where they have the big dome and then the spiral staircase, and in the middle of it, there is a rock tower that's covered in mountain goats, which I thought was kind of cool. And yeah, mountain goat, Gambing Gunung. That looks very cool. I wonder if there's another picture on the back. Okay, there's the guy's name, Rahmat Shah, I think. And then there's a message from him in Indonesian. Earlier, I mentioned that I really like to take video while I'm going somewhere. Like, for example, this video, the one I'm talking about so much, was all about the Rahmat Wildlife Gallery and Museum, but my video account of visiting this place includes going there and then coming back again, right? So I kind of like that. I guess it's kind of all a little bit of behind the scenes. I like the behind the scenes sort of stuff. My interest in these sorts of travel YouTube videos is to, I guess, my perspective on them. Whether this is a good thing or not, I don't know. But I like to focus on the whole package, what it is really like to be in this place as a foreigner and to do things. So, for example, if I made a video about taking the train to Siantar, I don't want the video to start with me on the train. I want to show, well, how did you buy a ticket? So I've got this entire video about going to the train station, trying to buy a ticket, being told that I'm not allowed to buy a ticket. Like if you try to buy a ticket in person at the train station, they won't let you. You know, all these weird things that happen, all these complications, all these problems. For me, that is part of the story. And whether that's an interesting part of the story or not, for me, it's the story I want to tell. When I mentioned this, I talked about the Lost Boys video. And I've been following the Lost Boys because they're here in Sumatra, and they're on a motorcycle journey all the way from Jakarta to the sort of northern tip of Sumatra, going all the way to Banda Aceh and Sabang, you know, the islands, Pulauwe. And their most recent video is called 48 Hours in the Sumatran Jungle. And this video is interesting for me and from a YouTube point of view because it's about, of course, going to see the orangutan. And that is a classic thing that everybody does in Sumatra. Like if you're a normal visitor to Sumatra on a holiday or you're a YouTuber, you have to do certain things. And one thing you have to do is go to Lake Toba, and the other thing you have to do is go look at the orangutan. And in all the times I've been to Sumatra, I've been here quite a few times, I've never done the jungle trek to see the orangutan. I don't know, it just never appealed to me to do it. Even when I watch the videos of the experience, I'm even less and less interested. I don't know why exactly. I'm sure it would be interesting. You go to Bukit Lawang or you go to another area. They went to another area called Katambe, and the Lost Boys, they said in their video that they deliberately decided to go to, I think it's Katambe. Yep, Katambe, because it is lesser known. Bukit Lawang, that's the popular place to go. Everybody knows about Bukit Lawang. So even if you come here to Medan, and everybody assumes you're going to Bukit Lawang. If I go out on the street here near the fancy Benin hotel. What's it called? It's a big fancy hotel here. Outside of the hotel, there are cars waiting, and you can hire the car to take you to Lake Toba and to take you to Bukit Lawang. You know, tour guides, tour groups will sell you a package tour that will take you to Bukit Lawang to go into the jungle and see the orangutan. So that is the most popular place to go. And the Lost Boys said, well, for their video experience, their YouTube videos, they thought Bukit Lawang was now too commercialized. So it isn't as real or as natural anymore. So they deliberately decided to go to Katambe. And then they hired a local guide for 3 days, 2 nights to go into the jungle, spend 2 nights sleeping in tents, and then hopefully they would see wildlife out there in the jungle. And that's what their video is all about. But being more intelligent YouTubers than I am, their video opens with walking down a trail and seeing an orangutan. Like they come right out of the gate with, look, there's an orangutan. They're in the jungle, they're walking down the trails, they're with their guide. So the video starts with them already in the jungle and then ends still in the jungle. So there is no, before the trip, there's no logistics, there's no planning the trip, there's no organizing of the trip, and there is no aftermath for the trip. And I'm sure this video will be very popular. It probably already has 20, 30,000 views because of what it is. They focused on the meat and potatoes of the experience. But what I noticed was the video before that, they were here in Medan and they went on a food tour. So they went out to all these different restaurants and they tried all of the most famous food of Medan. So that video ended, and then the next video, they're in the middle of the jungle. So of course, between the food journey and the jungle journey, they had to travel, right? They had to organize where to go, and then they had to travel like, I don't know what it is, 200-300 kilometers on their motorcycles. They had to travel from Medan to go deep into the mountains. It's a small road, goes right through the center of Sumatra, and then get to Katambe, find a place to stay, hook up with a local guide. And I think they made a deal. I think all of their videos now are sponsored because in their video, they have a lot of a commercial for this jungle trekking company. They stayed in a guest house, and as in the guest house itself also has guided tours into the jungle. It's like a whole package. And I'm pretty sure they made a deal with them and said, listen, let us do the jungle trek for free or at a big, big, big discount, and then we will advertise your company, in our video. And I have no problem with people doing that, more power to them. But for me, the video itself is not that interesting. Being in the jungle, I don't know, I could do without the whole video. The video I want is the video about them organizing the trip, because to me that's more real life, being a foreigner overseas. Like if you want to go see the orangutan in the jungles of Sumatra, okay, that's great, but now you've got to get there, you've got to organize it, you've got to pay for it, you've got to plan it, you've got to have the right gear for it, rain gear. Do you need camping equipment? How do you get transportation to this place? How do you find a proper guide? How do you have food in the jungle? Do they organize it, or do you organize your own food? How does all of this work? And I would love to see a video from the Lost Boys of them riding their motorcycle to Katambe, finding a place to stay, negotiating with a local company, getting a guide, and then having a day of planning for the trek into the jungle, making sure they have food and water and maybe safety equipment, emergency equipment, all that kind of preparation and planning, all the logistics and the behind the scenes stuff, that's what I would be more interested in seeing. So, you know, yeah, just a random thought I had about their Lost Boys video about the jungle trek. Well, my laptop is still busy exporting a video, so I have a few more minutes to chat a little bit. I guess I have a couple of other YouTube stories on my mind. I've been following Itchy Boots, of course, quite carefully on her trip through Africa and talking a lot about her various videos. But while I was watching her videos, the YouTube algorithm, you know, picked up on my interests, and in my feed, some other videos showed up from other motorcycle travelers from around the world. And there's one guy, I think he might be from Germany, but he sometimes posts videos in English, and his channel is called Yes Luke, and he happens to be riding a motorcycle through West Africa. I don't know whether he's ahead of Itchy Boots or behind her. You know, the timing on his videos is not perfectly clear to me, but it's kind of interesting because he did go through like countries like Guinea, and I talked a lot about my experiences in Guinea with corruption, and there was a lot of suspicion in Guinea when I was there. I mean, there were like border wars going on, a lot of conflicts in Liberia and Sierra Leone going on at the time. And these border wars, they would kind of spill over into Guinea. There were refugees in Guinea from Liberia and Sierra Leone. And there seemed to be a national concern about strangers in their midst. Everybody seemed to think everybody else was a spy for some reason. So when I was there, and anytime I got out my camera, this was all pre-video, I was only taking pictures. You know, I had a film camera for taking pictures at that time. This was back in the year 2000, 2001, I guess. And everywhere I went, if I brought out my camera, even local people dressed in local clothing, like not military, not police, not government, nothing official, just local people would come up to me and confront me and question me about what I was doing with my camera, and they all seemed to think that I was a spy for some sort of other country, up to no good. There was a lot of this going on where, I don't know, it was just a weird atmosphere in the air, a weird mood when I was there. And when Itchy Boots went through Guinea, I was expecting her to run into a lot of trouble with police and military checkpoints, but she really had no trouble at all. But Yes Luke, in one of his video when he went through Guinea, he had this really weird experience. He called the video Guinea, Africa Fake Police and Oil Change on the Road. So anyway, he was riding his motorbike, and he seems to camp out quite a bit. Like Itchy Boots is like making sure to stay in hotels every single night. Yes Luke seems to be a little bit more hardcore. He's camping out at night. He's setting up a tent. So he has more encounters with trouble, I think. And in this video, he went down to a river to wash his clothing and to take a shower. So rather than getting cleaned up in a hotel room, you know, he would ride his motorcycle down to a river and then get undressed as much as he can and then do a bucket bath in the river, rinse out his clothing and something like that. And in this video, he was doing that when a man came up to him and asked to see his ID or something and claimed to be police, you know, official police, and asked to see, you know, his documents, which to me was par for the course. I mean, that's the Guinea that I remember. Like everywhere I went, I was confronted by either real police, real soldiers, or people who just were busybodies and claimed to be from the police, or they were just like local government officials, and oh, we're from the village, and what are you doing here, and are you a spy, and what are you doing? You know, very confrontational and really quite angry with me everywhere I went. Guinea was just like that. So that seemed normal for me. But then this guy, Yes Luke, it struck me as odd that in his video he panicked. Like, all that happened was some random villager came up to him and asked to see his documents. And then, yes, Luke, he kind of freaked out, and he did this whole thing where he was gathering up all this stuff, getting dressed, running back to his motorcycle, packing up really quick, and then racing onto the road and zooming down the road. And then he found a dirt road where he could zoom off the road, found some trees where he could hide or something. And he was like, you know, and he was like sort of sent into a panic by this local person asking to see his documents. And that kind of struck me as odd. I don't know why he was so frightened by that encounter. But anyway, that was something that jumped out at me about his video. And then he ended up posting a video from Nigeria, and the video is called Nigeria, Rough But Welcoming. And it's very similar to the videos from Itchy Boots, except that the roads, like, he was going down the same type of roads as Itchy Boots, and when Itchy Boots was doing it, the roads were muddy and very difficult to navigate. This guy, yes, Luke, he's going down the same type of roads, but I guess it wasn't the rainy season, and the roads were exactly like the roads of Itchy Boots, except they were dry, completely dry. So there were deep tire tracks through the mud. Like when Itchy Boots was doing it, there were like these deep troughs where all the people would go through on their motorcycles and dig a gouge, you know, deeper and deeper, that would fill with water, muddy water, and then there would be raised portions and very, you know, covered in mud. This guy was doing the ride after the rainy season or before the rainy season, I'm not sure. And the roads looked exactly the same, had the same shape, except that they were hard mud now. So now he was riding just like bang, 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 like all this bumpy road, because all the mud had solidified into almost like concrete. So it was kind of interesting to get that contrast. You see the road in the rainy season, muddy rainy season, and now you see the same road but in the dry season when it was just like hard as concrete mud, because the mud had dried out and solidified. You know, that was kind of interesting. And when he was in Nigeria, he included in his video multiple occasions when at the checkpoints they asked him for money. Like Itchy Boots had that whole experience where she showed in her video one police officer asking her for money. You know, it's like, give me something, you know, give me money. And she put that in her video, and that police officer and his partner, both of them ended up getting stripped of their uniform in a public ceremony and fired from the Nigerian police force. So, and that video was posted online to shame them and kind of send the signal to the Nigerian police that you shouldn't ask people on the road for money. But again, I talked about this at length before, the way Itchy Boots phrased everything in her video. She was saying like, corrupt police demand money. That's what she called her video. But from my point of view, it was more casual than that. It wasn't really so much that they were corrupt police. It was more like they were just local people and just, you know, like, can you give me some money? Like, you look like you're rich. You've got your big fancy motorcycle. You're a foreigner from Europe. Can you give me some money? Like, it's more like they were asking for money, not demanding it in their official capacity as a police officer, if you see the difference. And this guy in his video, he ran into it over and over and over, and he recorded a lot of these instances where the police officers again asked him for money. It's like, oh, can you give me some money? More in a casual way, if you know what I mean. Anyway, I just found that kind of interesting. So like his video, what did he call it? He just called it Nigeria, Rough But Welcoming. And that seems like a fair title for that kind of video. Pretty rough place, a lot of interactions with the police and the military, rough roads. People were kind of aggressive, asking for money. but he didn't couch it in terms of, corruption and demanding money. It was all these police officers being kind of friendly, but they were asking to see his documents all the time. Can we see your passport? I think that happened in his video. And then they're saying, oh, like, can you give us some money? Like, can you, give us some money? And they just happen to be in police uniform when they're doing it, right? Like even me here in Medan, when I made my walk to the Rahmat Wildlife Museum yesterday, I don't know how many people approached me for money. People just on the streets came up to me and, can you give me money? Give me money, give me money. And of course, the difference is they were not in police uniform. They were just, average people. But somehow people asking you for money seems like a normal part of daily life, of traveling in some parts of the world. And I guess it happens a lot in Nigeria, and it happened a lot to Yes Luke. And of course, his videos are not popular. He's not on the same scale as Itchy Boots, and they're not as polished. Production values aren't as high, and he's not really presenting himself on being on some kind of amazing grand adventure. He's just a normal local guy having an adventure, riding his motorbike through Afrika, and he's filming a little bit from time to time, But I kind of enjoy that casual approach because I guess that's more my style as well. So I think with that, I am going to shut down for today. I'm going to have another cup of coffee, continue my unofficial fast to try and survive this illness, day 5 of not eating. Oh, oddly enough, I took a little break here while I was shooting this behind the scenes video, just to give my voice a break and have a drink of water. And while I was doing that, I watched a video from the best, what's it called again? The Best Ever Food Review Show. I'm sure everybody knows this guy. Very, very famous food vlogger. He's an American based out of Vietnam now. And he posted this video from the United States, and the title of the video was "Confessing Why Applebee's Fired Me While Eating Applebee's." And I'm not familiar with Applebee's. I know the name. I've never eaten at an Applebee's. But anyway, I guess his story is that when he was younger, before he came to Asia, he was a waiter, an attendant at Applebee's, a server, I guess you call them, and he was fired from Applebee's, and now he went back to the same Applebee's where he used to work and where they fired him, and he told the story of why he was fired, but he combined it with having a meal there and reviewing the food at Applebee's. Anyway, I just watched that video, and I guess I'm hungry because every single dish that came to his table, I was like, oh man, I wanted to eat all of that food. I mean, his review of the food was positive. I mean, he basically said, wow, this is delicious. This is really good for the most part. But he also commented on how fattening it was. Like every single dish was like, whatever, 1,500 calories, 2,000 calories. I don't know anything about calories. I don't know if 1,500 calories is a lot for one dish or 2,000 calories. I don't know how many calories you get in a day. I have no idea. But all of this food looks incredibly fattening. Tons of cheese and sauces and salad dressings, and just everything looks incredibly fattening, and it looks incredibly delicious. By the time I finished watching that video, I was like, oh man, I wish I could teleport there right now if I were feeling better. To have a meal like that right now would be amazing. And yeah, I'm kind of inspired. And maybe tomorrow, maybe I'm going to go to a local restaurant and have Western food. There's a place here called Tip Top, a classic older restaurant, and I noticed they serve like chicken steak with French fries, and it looked really good to me. Maybe I'll go to Tip Top have that meal and do a video about a tip-top restaurant. But that's if I stay in Medan longer. I really should leave because I have to get out of here soon. I wasn't intending to stay in Medan for all of this trip. I really wasn't. I had plans to travel to all these different places, but for a variety of reasons, I just didn't do it. And now I have a flight out of Banda Aceh back to Kuala Lumpur on February 3rd. So I either have to journey to Banda Aceh for that flight, or just give up on that flight and book another one out of Medan and just stay in this area, because I only have like 2 weeks left on my visa. Man, I wish I could get another 30 days, but there's no way I can do it. My visa period, it has expired just about. So anyway, we'll see what happens. All right, that is it for this morning. Shutting down, and see you in the next video.